Hello and welcome to this video where we're going to take a look at a way you can effectively get non-linear undo. So this is something which I've never seen a real solution for because undo is complex enough if you've ever tried doing any programming, but certainly having non-linear undo, i.e. when we can go back and unpick certain actions, is more difficult to do because you don't know if your actions have affected other things, etc. And it's certainly not something which is available in Cubase. But I've got a technique which I'm going to show you in this video, which allows you to kind of get non-linear undo. Now, the reason this came about is I often do quite a bit of work for clients, and since over the last few years, there's been a lot more remote work and a lot more unattended work because people are still working in a different way than we used to before 2020. So this is a technique that I've done where maybe I go a bit on a limb and possibly do something not necessarily the client hasn't asked for, but possibly the client didn't specifically ask for. So what I tend to do is I use this technique to allow me to remove one thing which I've done without removing all of the things I've done. So it's not strictly speaking non-linear undo, but it's a near approximation of it, and it allows you to work in a clearer way. So let me just show you. The normal workflow would be something like this. So let's say I'm just going to chop up these bass parts just so you can see something. So let's say my idea was that I was going to remove the bass in every second part of every section, which is probably a terrible idea. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the drums and I'm going to remove some of these drum fills. So the kind of thing you might do, and then either you might change your mind and you go, you know what, I'm not sure about that. Now, you can, of course, make duplicate tracks and have versions that way, but the problem is that that can end up being a real nightmare mess because you can end up with loads of different versions. Now, the issue here is now, if I want to undo what I did on the bass, so if I want to change this back, yeah, maybe I could remember what I've done, but often you've done lots of, intricate bits and pieces, and you've edited a lot of stuff, and maybe you've edited notes. It's not something just as gross and simple as this. You can't go back because if we look at the history, we would need to undo all of these things here, all these splits and deletes, which were done on the synthwave drum loop track, to go back to getting the bass back to how it was. So we can obviously do that. So you can, I'm not sure if you know, but you can just use this line here and you can see what's happening with the undo. So this is a nice thing. If you've never experimented with this, you can go back nice and visually to wherever you were, but you can see to get these edits back, we need to undo the edits on there. Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to keep these and get rid of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to how this started out. This is the way that I get around this problem. So what I do is I use track versions. So track versions are really, really useful. There's lots of useful applications for them, but this is one that I use quite a lot when I'm working to get this. So you click here. It's one of these slightly annoying user interface things where it disappears until you hover over it. I'm not a fan of that. I think everything should be there so you're not having to remember that things are there. But hover over this and then click on the little triangle and then do duplicate version. If you do new version, you get a blank track, which is sometimes useful. So maybe you were going to start from scratch and you might want to do that. But in this case, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to do duplicate version. And then I'm going to do that same editing that I did before. So I'm just going to trim these down. And this is the first stage. So often what I will do when I do this, I will name the track version as well, because I might do several track versions. So typically, if I'm doing vocal processing, I would normally do some timing work. So maybe just tighten up the timing. I'm not a huge fan of everything being super in time, but sometimes things just needs tweaking, one way. And in fact, that would probably not just be with vocals, that would be with other things as well. So I'd normally do like a timing pass. Then I would typically do a tuning pass, particularly on a vocal, so a bit of just tweaking the tuning and getting it sorted out. And then I might do a creative pass, as it were, where maybe I'll edit a bit out, make some changes, etc. And by having those three different sort of checkpoints, we can go back and I haven't got to undo the whole thing. You know, it might be that the timing is okay, but the pitch is too much, or the timing and the pitch are okay, but my creative ideas are anything but, etc. So typically I would rename that version. So I'd just call it, you know, cut bass. Spelt properly though. So, you know, I now know where I'm at with that. Now I can go to the drum fill loop track here. Again, I'll do duplicate version. And then I'm going to just quickly chop these. And then just delete every second one as we go. So there's my new chopped thing. And I'm going to call that, you know, chopped fills, etc., which you can see reasonably well. Now, if I want to undo this, all I need to do is to go back to that previous version. So if I go back to V1, we're back to where we were, and I haven't had to change this. So yeah, it's not strictly non-linear undo, but it's a near approximation of it. And it means you can be more experimental. So you can try a few different versions of this and a few different versions of that, and then you can chop them around, which is a more traditional use of track versions. But I often use them, say, in this non-linear undo way. I'll end up with a few different versions, which will allow me to go back. And I don't have to get rid of an edit that I like to change an edit that I don't like. And often that changes during the course of the production, because you might make a change that actually now you do like it with this, or you don't like it with something else you've done. As ever, I hope you found that useful, and we'll see you again soon for more Music Tech Tuition.